All right, well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are joining from today. This is a webinar on linking children, adults, and households in IPUMS MICS. We are going to get started with the presentation as people continue to come into the webinar. Just a few logistics. This webinar is being recorded and will be posted after the fact. There are captions that can be generated by using the CC button on Zoom. If you have any questions about Zoom accessibility or connections, you can send those directly to the host in the chat. If you have any content questions or things that you would like discussed in the Q&A, you can use the Q&A feature. I have two wonderful colleagues today assisting me with the chat and the Q&A, and they will be helping with any Zoom logistics and answering any of your questions while I present today. And sometime after this webinar, we will be sending out the slides and other materials from today's webinar, including the recording. So the slides will be sent out after the fact, and you will have access to those if you are registered. An introduction of me, your presenter today. My name is Anna Bulgren, and I am the project manager at IPUMS MICS. IPUMS is based at the University of Minnesota, and we are a project funded by NICHD in partnership with UNICEF and UNICEF MICS. There's a lot of material that we're going to be covering today, as linking among children, adults, and households in IPUMS MICS is a common question that we get from users, and most people are looking for a little bit more assistance on it. So today we'll be covering the different units of analysis in MICS using an example household to demonstrate the different types of relationships between the data files and individuals in that household. I will walk through some examples of direct relationships and indirect relationships and talk a little bit about how you might want to decide what relationships are required for your research question. And then I will give a small demonstration in Stata that shows how to actually write some of the syntax and how to check if the relationships that you are merging or linking are working. So this is a very technical demonstration and a very small part of what IPUMS MICS can offer. And so in order to make the most efficient use of our time, there are many topics that I'm not going to discuss today. I'm going to make the assumption that most people here are at least somewhat familiar with MICS, UNICEF MICS, or IPUMS MICS. And therefore, I'm not going to be giving background information about the history of MICS and the topics or variables covered. I'm only briefly going to discuss how to navigate the IPUMS MICS website, I'm not going to discuss finding variables, creating extracts, downloading, opening, or running those extracts. All of these topics are available as user notes on the IPUMS MICS website. We have done webinars that discuss these procedural questions in more detail, and my colleagues can refer you to different user guides or webinar recordings if that is something that you're interested in. But just to save time, I'm not going to go into detail today. As I mentioned before, I'm also going to be doing a demonstration in Stata, and therefore I'm not going to be talking about merging or linking in other statistical softwares, just Stata today. There's already been a bunch of language that I've used to discuss this topic of linking children, women, and households. So let me just take a step back to clarify that there's a lot of different ways to talk about this concept, or a lot of these concepts that typically can be used interchangeably or mean the same thing. So throughout this talk, I'm going to be discussing things like a unit of analysis, a data file, or a data set to really refer to all the same things. So the woman unit of analysis refers to the women data files. I'm also going to be using the words merging or linking pretty interchangeably, linking across data sets or merging information across units of analysis. Typically, these do mean very comparable things. I'll also be referring to key identifiers or unique identifiers, record identifiers, either household record identifiers or individual key identifiers. And these are all ways of referring to specific variables that can be used to identify records or observations within those data files that refer to the same person or the same household. So for an example, a woman in the woman data file or the woman unit of analysis has a unique identifier that identifies that particular woman. And those unique identifiers can be found in a different unit of analysis, also referring to that exact same woman. So records and observations might be referring to the same sort of individual households or individual people within the different record types. Jumping right into the meat of the discussion today, there are a variety of different units of analysis in IPUMS MICS. These are associated with the different questionnaires or data files that are present in the UNICEF MICS datasets. I'm going to frequently be referring to these units of analysis by the first column, which is showing the shorthand. So I'll spend a little bit of time right now talking through these things so that they're not just a bunch of acronyms. The HH unit of analysis refers to household characteristics. So in general, this refers to a particular household or dwelling or household unit. And information on the household is found in this household unit of analysis. So this could be things like the material of the roof or the source of drinking water or the different household possessions that someone in the household owns. So in this household unit of analysis, there are records for each of the households. The next unit of analysis is the HL file, and that stands for household list or household members or household roster. And this refers to a unit of analysis where each observation is a different individual person within the household. So just a list of every single person in all of the households. The next 4 units of analysis refer to more information about those individual people living in the household. So the most commonly used unit is the woman unit of analysis, and this is a data set or a unit of analysis that includes information on women living in the household who are age 15 to 49. And there's a lot of information about these women and their demographics, their reproductive health, their sexual health, a large number of variables about the women themselves. The next unit of analysis, CH, refers to the children under age 5 or the children 0 to 4. And this is a unit of analysis that includes information about all children age 0 to 4 in the household and different variables and information about those children. These first 4 units of analysis, the household members, the women, and the children, are common across all MICS samples. Every single one of them has these 4 units of analysis. Additionally, most of the more recent samples include information on adolescents, which is this FS unit of analysis. And FS stands for children 5F to 17, which is the S. This adolescent data set is comprised of one randomly selected child of the age 5 to 17 in the household. And again, these are really only more commonly commonly available for samples after about 2017 to 2025. And finally, many samples include information on men, MN, men, in the household. These men are typically age 15 to 49, though some samples have a slightly different age range. And again, this is a data set of information about all of the men in the household. So there's a lot of information about a lot of different people within the households across all of these different units of analysis. When you are navigating the IPUMS MICS website, you will want to select the data and then select among these units of analysis to begin browsing among variables available for that unit of analysis. When you are on the IPUMS MICS website, you are only able to browse and create an extract for one unit of analysis at a time. So therefore, if you are browsing within the children unit of analysis, you can see all the variables available about those children. You can create an extract about children, but you won't be able to see any of the women variables or any of the household variables unless you close out of that children unit and enter into a different unit. This is a little confusing, and there are a lot of different units of analysis. And this is because of the way that UNICEF MICS organizes their data and make the data available. And due to our agreements with UNICEF, IPUMS provides unaltered data. We actually just provide the syntax to accompany unaltered data. Therefore, we do not do any of the linking across these units in advance because that would be altering the data sets. So a potential drawback to this approach is there are a lot of different units of analysis, could be a lot of different files, and each person has to go and make an extract from multiple units of analysis before they can start their research or their analysis. There's also a lot of complex relationships between these files that can make it a little bit confusing about which variables are on which units or which people are on which units. And I agree that this can be very confusing, and that's why we are hosting this webinar today to illuminate some of those complexities and really show that it is a bit complex, but it's also a big strength of the IPUMS MICS data sets to have such a rich network of relationships between files. It really opens the door to more types of research and what types of linkages or merging can be done. So getting into a specific example to try to start to build out the relationships among these different units of analysis, I'm going to start by showing this example household. So within a sampled household, there are a series of variables about that household. Without going into too many details about the MICS sample design, there's basically within a sample, and that is a particular data collection effort within a country in a particular year. The sample takes a sample of different clusters from around the country, and within each of those sampled clusters, about 20 households are selected within the cluster. So this allows for households to be identified by their sample, their cluster, and their household number to create a unique identifier for the household. So in this example, I'm using the sample of Sierra Leone 2017, cluster number 1, and household 15. So this would be the information available on the household record for this particular household. In addition to being able to uniquely identify households, you can also uniquely identify individuals within those households based on their line number, the individual's line number. So among the household member file, the line number of the household listing provides a foundation for the line numbers available in all of the other types of data files or units of analysis. So to uniquely identify individuals, you need to know their sample, their cluster, and their household number to know which household they live in. And then you need to know their line number. And that line number, the variable name changes across the different data sets. So line WM for the woman's line number, line CH for the child's line number. But all of these line numbers refer back to the line number present from the household roster. Let's make this a little bit more concrete by showing an example household roster. And we will be working with this household throughout the rest of this presentation portion. So let's spend a little bit of time getting to know the people who live in this household. So there is a male head of household and his spouse. Those are lines 1 and 2. There are 4 children, a daughter who's 16, a daughter who is 10, a son who is 8, and a daughter who is 4. And those are the children in line 4, 5, 3, 4, 5, and 6. There is a grandson who lives in the house who's age 1 in line 7. And then the mother of the head of the household is located in line 8. So each of these individuals is assigned a particular line number within this household. Moving on to the other data files or the other units of analysis, the man in this household is between the ages of 15 and 49. And so he could be found in the men unit of analysis or the men data file, with the line number 1 being his unique identifier. Likewise, both of these women are between 15 and 49. And so the 30-year-old spouse and the 16-year-old daughter also have observations or records in the woman unit of analysis that can be linked to their line numbers 2 and 3. These 2 young children are between 0 and 4. And so this daughter in line 6 and the grandson in line 7 are both present in the child data file or the child unit of analysis. And finally, like I mentioned, the more recent samples have an adolescent file that randomly selects among the 5 to 17-year-olds present in the household. One of those children is selected to be in the adolescent file. And so in this case, the 10-year-old daughter is present in the FS, 5 to 17-year-old adolescent data file. And you can see that the line number 4 is matching the line number from the household for this child in line 4. So overall, this one household is represented in 7 different data files. The household file for the information about the household roster file with all the information about the individuals, and then select individuals are located in the women and men files, and the children and adolescent files. So there's a lot of different files that can represent different information about each of these people within this household. This can be very complex. Which unit of analysis might you want for your data or your data set? And this really depends on your research question and which variables or topics are present on which data set. The relationship between the data sets may also depend on your research question, on which extracts you might want to be creating, which people you might want to be looking for, and what sort of information you might want to be merging. So for example, your research question might be on breastfeeding, but you can approach this question from 2 different directions. You can either have information about children and their breastfeeding experience, or children who are currently breastfeeding, and attach on their mother's characteristics onto those children. Or maybe you're more interested in how women are experiencing breastfeeding, and therefore you want to attach on characteristics of the children onto those women. either something about the last child, currently breastfeeding children, or some sort of summary about breastfeeding duration or the maximum amount of time breastfed among the children. So these relationships can go both directions, and what your main, primary, or final data unit of analysis depends on your research question and how you want to analyze your data. Today, I'm going to be talking through two very high-level types of linking between data files. The first is representing direct file linkages, where there's a unique identifier in two different data files, and you can use those unique identifiers to directly link the two data sets. So this can be done linking households to individuals, individuals to individuals within a different data file. And I'm going to show an example of linking mothers and caregivers to their children. Alternatively, there's some research questions that will require indirect file linkages that will actually require a third data set to provide some sort of information or unique identifier to accurately make sure that you are linking what you mean to be linking. And the most concrete example of this is attempting to link biological mothers or fathers to children. This actually requires a third data set that I'll walk through today. So focusing first on the direct linkages. The most basic example is if you have your household roster and you want to add characteristics about the household onto the people who live in that household. So in order to do this, you would have your household HH unit of analysis, and you would duplicate that information across all of the members of that household. So you would have information about the water source that all of these household members have access to, and it would be the same for all household members. It's also very simple to link household information onto each of the individual types of like the individual units of analysis. So linking household characteristics onto the woman file or the man file or the adolescent or children files. So you know more about the household in which these women or men or children live in. This is very simply done using direct file linkages using the household identifier, the cluster, and the household number to directly link between these two files. It's also fairly simple to link individuals in the household roster to the individual information that can be found on the other units of analysis. So using the unique identifier of the line number, you can link information about each of these household members to the men, the women, the adolescent, or the children file using the line numbers as the unique identifiers. You also note here that there are two members of this household that do not have another data set related to them, this 8-year-old boy and the 65-year-old grandmother of the head of the household don't have information in any other place. So the information about these individuals on the household roster is all the information that is available for these individuals. Like the household, you can also link the household member to themselves on the different units of analysis. So this looks like information on the woman unit of analysis. You can add on additional information about that woman from the household member unit of analysis. Now, this might seem a little redundant because you're linking information from about one individual from two different data sets. But this is actually kind of important for MICS because there are specific variables that are only found on one unit of analysis and not on others. So for example, the household raw list, HL, unit of analysis, has a very rich and detailed information about education that and that education information is not found on any of these other units of analysis, the women, the men, or the children files. So while you might have a lot of information about the woman, you might be lacking some sort of information about her education that you can only find from the household list. And therefore, it can be very convenient to be able to link those two together so that you now have additional information about the woman. This is a way to keep file sizes smaller and to prevent redundancies or duplication across the different files. But it does present a little bit of a challenge in knowing which unit of analysis contains information about which topics. And that's something that we talk about in other IPUMS MICS webinars, is how to find variables and topics. So I'm not going to talk any more about that today. One of the most common linkages that people want to do with IPUMS MICS is to link mother's information onto children, or vice versa. In IPUMS MICS and in MICS overall, there's information about all children 0 to 4 in the household, not just biological children of women in that household. If anyone is in a DHS or Demographic and Health Survey user, this is a very substantial difference between DHS and MICS. That causes a little bit of complication when it comes to linking women and children or mothers and children. So just to repeat, MICS includes information on all children 0 to 4 in a household, no matter if they're living with their mothers or not. Therefore, all children are assigned a mother or caregiver proxy respondent to answer the questions about them. Information about this mother caregiver respondent can be found on the child unit of analysis with the variable line MC for mother caregiver. And this refers to the line number of the individual and can be directly linked onto the woman unit of analysis using that unique identifier of the woman's line number. So this is a way to directly link children to women using the mother caregiver variable. Now, some of you might have noticed that the mother caregiver might not be the biological mother of the child. Overall, if the child's mother lives in the household, she is assigned as the mother caregiver. I have looked at thousands of these records and I've never seen a difference in this. If the mother lives in the household, she is assigned the mother caregiver. If this biological mother is between the ages of 15 and 49, she will have a woman record or an observation in the woman's data file. And therefore, linking between the child's mother caregiver to the woman file is seamless. However, sometimes the mother of the child is not 15 to 49. Typically, she's older, possibly younger. And in this case, this woman would not have a record in the woman unit of analysis. She would still be found among the household members, but it would not be possible to directly link this child to a woman record. If the child's mother does not live in the household, the caregiver is selected among the household members, so they will always appear on the household roster. The caregiver may still appear on the woman unit of analysis. And this could be the case that a stepmother or a grandma or an auntie or a sister is selected as the caregiver and also happens to be 15 to 49, and therefore she would have a record on the woman's unit of analysis. And the child could be linked to that individual, even though this individual is not the child's biological mother. It's also commonly the case that the caregiver is male, such as the child's biological father, or a grandfather, or a brother, or a stepfather, and therefore obviously would not have a record on the woman unit of analysis, but it is possible that this father or male caregiver could be identified in the men unit of analysis. And again, the caregiver or the mother always will be among the household roster, but they may not have that additional level of information found on the woman unit of analysis. One way to confirm whether or not the child's caregiver, mother caregiver, is indeed the child's biological mother is to use information from the household roster that identifies the child's biological parents. So on the HL, household list unit of analysis, there are specific variables that identify the line number of the biological mother and the biological father, as seen in these two columns indicated in purple. This information is present for all household members between 0 and 17. So anyone under 18 does refer to their biological parents among the household roster. Using this information from this household roster, we can indirectly link each of the children to their biological mothers by confirming that the mother caregiver is in fact their biological mothers. So in this example, the daughter in line 6 indicates that her biological mother is in line 2, and therefore we can link to the woman who is represented by line 2 in this household. Likewise, the grandson in line 7 reports their biological mother is in line 3, and we can use this information to link to the woman with that unique identifier as line 3. In both of these cases, the mother caregiver is in fact the biological mother of these two young children. But if we look at that adolescent file, the child in line 4, the 10-year-old daughter, reports that she does not have a biological mother living in this household. Instead, her caregiver is reported in line 2, the 30-year-old spouse. It's likely in this scenario that this is the stepmother of this daughter, given that the daughter's biological father is in line 1. And therefore, we can still use the line number of the mother caregiver to link to the woman in line 2, but we've used the household roster to confirm that this is not this child's biologic mother. There's a lot of information about these different types of relationships, and what kind of relationship you want to consider really depends on your research question. And again, how you want to shape the data set that you are using in your analysis, and which data sets or units of analysis have the linking information that you might want. And another key thing to think about is what type of relationship there are between the data files. And in statistical language, this is often referred to as a one or many relationship. And so I'm going to talk through this language because this is the language that Stata uses to refer to relationships between data sets. So many of the direct relationships that I talked about today are one-to-one relationships where one woman in one file refers to a single woman in a different data file. So there's only one record for the single woman in each of the two data files. Alternatively, direct relationships can also be many to one, as in the example that all of the many household members link to a single household. that household is then replicated across the different household members. But those household members don't live in two households, they're only in one. It is possible to construct a one-to-many relationship across these different data sets. One of the most common is thinking about one woman having many children in the child unit of analysis. And this type of relationship is possible, but it definitely requires more thought on how you want to interpret it in your analysis or in your data set. Some options for thinking about how to merge one woman onto multiple children might involve only merging the youngest child or the oldest child, or creating some sort of summary of all of her children, or restructuring your data to be a wide format, or possibly flipping your relationship to have many children reporting to one woman. All of these decisions are possible, but it really depends on what the research question is to determine which is the best one for your particular research. This is a representation of a matrix that Stata, how Stata is thinking about these different types of merge relationships. And this image can be found on our user note on the IPUMS MICS website, where we talk through in greater detail how to define different types of relationships in Stata. So there's a lot of information here, but you can see the representation of M for many to one, or the one-to-one relationships that I was talking about earlier. I'm going to pause and ask my colleagues if any questions have come through. And in the meantime, I'm going to be switching over to the Stata portion of the Stata demonstration portion of this webinar. Once again, we will be posting and sending out these slides, the do file that I'm going to walk through, any questions that are in the Q&A that I don't get to today. And if you have any questions in the future, or you're watching this recording in the future and you have questions, please email them to ipums@umn.edu. Okay, so I am going to briefly walk through in Stata a few examples of a selected household. And what I'm going to be mimicking today is linking, starting with the household roster. I'm going to be linking on the child records, and then I will also link on the women records using that line number of the biological mother, not the mother caregiver, to sort of compare between how many biological mothers are linked versus how many non-biological mother caregivers are linked. So what I've done is I've already created the household roster, child and woman data extracts that I'm going to be using today. So the first one I'm going to bring up is the household roster, the HL file. And then I am going to show the line number, relationship status, age, and the line number of the mom and the line number of the dad for a particular household. So I'm going to do a cluster equals 1 and household number equals 9. This is a fairly straightforward household. Sorry, I'm having a tiny bit of trouble with my mouse here. And within this example household, you can see that there's a head of the household and his spouse, and their 3 children who are all boys. And in the line no mom, line number mom, and the line number dad variables, you can see that they are all 3 boys are pointing to the spouse as their mother and the head as their father. So a fairly simple type of relationship. I'm going to show a second household that has a bit of a more multi-generational structure to it, with a head and his spouse living with four children, a 24-year-old daughter, a 20-year-old son, and two 13-year-old girls, and three grandchildren, a boy and two girls. Now I'm going to additionally add in the variables line number mom and line number dad into this same household to show that the household members under the age of 17 have information about the line number mom, and the line number dad is available for the two 13-year-old girls. So these two children are the biological children of the head of household and his spouse. And these three grandchildren are living with their biological mother, who's located in line 3, but their biological father is not in the household. That is not in the universe. In this household, we see that there are two children under the age of 5, and we would expect to see these two children in the child unit of analysis. And we also see two women between 15 and 49 that we would expect to see in the woman unit of analysis. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to try to find those particular individuals in the child unit of analysis, just looking at these data files before I do any linkage. And I'm going to list the line of the child, the sex of the child, and the age of the child, and the line of the mother caregiver if the cluster is equal to 4 and the household number is equal to 15. So it's the same household. And indeed, I do see the 4-year-old boy and the 3-year-old, or sorry, the 1-year-old girl, who are both from that household, pointing to the line number of their mother caregiver, who happens to be the biological mother. One thing I'm going to do while I have this data file open is I'm going to generate a variable called line no equal to the child's line number in order to create a unique identifier so that I can link these children onto the household roster. And then I'm going to save this data file. With this new variable so that I'm able to link it moving forward. Next, I'm going to do the same thing with the woman file. I'm going to open it up. And I'm going to look for the line number of the woman, and I'm going to just check her age. If the cluster is equal to 4 and the household number is equal to 15. And as expected, I see that there are those two women, the 45-year-old spouse and the 24-year-old daughter, in the woman unit of analysis. And again, to make a linking key that I'm going to use later on, I'm going to generate the variable line number mom to be equal to the woman's line number so that I can use this variable to link onto the household record for the line number of the mom. And I'm going to save this file. Okay. Next, I'm going to go back to the household to start my linking process. And I am going to just quickly bring up that household again so that we have reference that it's the same household. And now I'm going to start the merge process. So I'm going to type merge, that's the command that Stata uses, and I want to merge the children onto the household roster. And that's going to be a one-to-one relationship because I expect each child to only appear on the household roster once. The unique identifiers are the sample, cluster, household number, and the line number. And I'm going to use the child data file that I just checked. These results from the merge command show a variety of interesting things. This suggests that 11,774 children were successfully matched from the child file onto the household roster. None of the children were unsuccessfully matched, which is great. We expect to see all the children on the household roster. But we do see that there are 63,241 individuals who weren't in the household, who are on the household roster but are not children. And this is as expected because these are all of the adults and anyone over the age of 4. So this is as we expect. I'm going to run a little command to just rename this merge variable that was generated just to make things a little bit easier. And then I'm also going to show what this household looks like with this new merge. And we can see that these variables are from the household list. And these new variables are from the child unit of analysis, and they have successfully matched to the right child. The next merge I'm going to do is the women onto the children for which the women are the biological mothers. So this is a many to one relationship because there can be many children that match onto one woman. My unique identifiers again are sample, cluster, household number, and this time it's the line number of the mother using the woman data set. And in this case, we were able to match 23,000 children, have a woman merged onto them. There are about 7,000 women who did not match onto a child, and this is as expected. Not all women would have a child in the household roster. And 51,000 individuals were not children under the age of 18. Next, I'm going to run a small little command that will reorganize the data to just make it easier to see. And looking again at our example household, we can now see that in addition to the information about the children, we also have information about the women that is being linked from the line number of the mom. And in this example, we can see that the mother, for these two children, the biological mother, the mother caregiver, and the woman all have the same line number. And they're all referring to this 24-year-old daughter who's living in the household. I want to show a quick example of sorry, this is just isolating it on the children here. I want to do a little experiment where I'm going to generate a variable called biomom, and I'm going to make this biological mother variable equal to 1. if the line number of the mother caregiver is equal to the line number of the mom, and the line number of the mother caregiver is not missing. So that will eliminate the individuals in the household that are over the age of 4. I'm going to also clean up this variable a little bit by creating the inverse that I want to replace biomom is equal to 0 if the line number of the mother caregiver is not equal to the line number of the mother. And once again, I don't want to assign this value to individuals who do not have a mother caregiver value, so don't assign this if it's equal to missing. And if I do a tabulate of this new variable, biomom, we see that among the children, the 0 to 4-year-old children, 10,000 of them report that their mother caregiver is identical to their biological mother. So 86% of children are living with their biological mother, but almost 14% of children are have a proxy respondent or a caregiver respondent instead of their biological mother. And the last thing that I just want to show is a little bit more of a complex household that demonstrates what this might look like. So to answer the question that I was asked earlier, in this household, we have 3 children under the age of 5 who are present in the child unit of analysis. And we can see that this first one, this 0-year-old, is living with a biological mother who is present in line 2, so the 16-year-old female. But these 2 other children, the 2-year-old and the 4-year-old, are adopted or fostered or stepchildren. Their mother caregiver is reported as this 36-year-old female who's the head of the household, but we can see that she is flagged as not their biological mother. So this is a much more complicated household with not related children, daughters, adopted children, that definitely shows the nuance and the complexity of different household structures. So with that, we have probably less than a minute. I am going to switch back into the presentation to just once again bring up email address. If you have any future questions, ipums.umn.edu, our wonderful, wonderful user support team can answer any additional questions. Once again, we will be posting the Q&A questions. So if you have questions that weren't answered, send them now in the Q&A or send them to ipums.umn.edu. We will answer them and provide a written explanation. We'll send the recording, the slides, and that do file that I was using following the webinar. If this was useful and you'd like me to talk about other complex topics in IPUMS MICS, please send them our way and I'd be happy to address other topics. So thank you everyone for being here and have a wonderful rest of your day wherever you are.